So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story. So first of all, I know this is hosted through a U of M tied thing, but I have to admit that I am from Ohio. So I know that can be, you know, it can be a problem for some people, but I am from Ohio, a very small town in Ohio called Defiance. That was the county seat. And if you know of anybody who talks about being the county seat, that means they come from a very small area. So just as a point of reference, the towns around Defiance were Ney, Rice, Farmer, and Hicksville. So that just gives you a sense of the kind of agricultural community that I grew up in. It's very agricultural. So it probably doesn't surprise you to hear that I was the first person in my family and extended family to go to college. So going to college was something that was not a norm in my family. In fact, I very much recall the day that my dad was driving me to dance class because I was a thespian. I love to act and sing and be in the band and dance, and I did all of those things in high school. Was not the sports person, wasn't the team sport person. And my dad asked me what I was going to do after high school, and I looked at him like he had two heads, and I said, well, I'm going to go to college. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, is that right? I said, well, yeah, I'm going to college. And he's like, well, I didn't go to college. Your mom didn't go to college. Your older sister didn't go to college. So how are you going to pay for this? That was a good question. Hadn't really thought about that. So at that point, I decided that the paper route that I had in Defiance, Ohio was probably not going to be enough. And so I got a job at the local food court at the mall, and every single check went into my college fund, every check. The only check that I kept was the one that I kept to buy my parents and family Christmas gifts. So everything went into the college fund. And so not having a family that had a history of going to college, my parents were adamant that I know what I was going to major in before going to school. Okay, I'm 17. Of course I know what I want to be when I grow up, right? So I had no clue. I had no clue. And we did these things in high school. I don't know if they still do them or not, but we did ASVAB tests. So an ASVAB test was done by the military, I think, and it was to introduce you to the types of careers you could be introduced to should you choose to go into the military. And the military was a big thing in Defiance, Ohio, where a lot of people went. So I took the ASVAB test, and knowing that I had to figure out a major, I clearly put a lot of time into it because I didn't get past the A's, and I chose air traffic controller. Yeah, I decided I had this proclivity to see patterns, and proclivity means like a tendency to see patterns. And so that was the one thing that came out of my ASVAB test. And so I decided, that's kind of cool. Be an air traffic controller. Done. So believe it or not, there are two schools, and at least, I won't say how long ago, a while ago, there were only two schools in the entire United States that had any kind of major associated with air traffic control. One was Embry-Riddle, which was an aeronautical school in Florida, which I of course would have been fine going to. And the other one was Eastern Michigan University, of all places. Who knew? Eastern Michigan. So I went full bore, all in, and I went and visited air traffic control towers to see how it worked. I got to rename planes, like I did the whole thing investigating it, and started school. And like every college freshman does, you start with your standard classes and the required classes, and you take one or two of your major classes the second semester. Well, in the first semester of my second year, so my sophomore year, so the name of the major was Communications Technology. It was a blend of business, communications, and technology. I took my first technology class, my first semester of my sophomore year. That was not good. It was not good at all. Yeah, hated it, hated everything about it. Electricity and currents, and I didn't care. Was not my thing. So I had been taking the business classes because I had to take those for this major, and I was really enjoying those, specifically the marketing classes. So Middle of my sophomore year, I did change to a marketing major and a communications minor because I was already almost done with the communications minor given the classes I had already taken. So I just kept that and then changed to marketing, but that of course put me on the 5-year track, which was really great for my budget, which I did not have one. So there was a lot of multiple jobs working to get through school, but I finally graduated and got to the real world, right? So my first job out of college was copier and facsimile sales. Now, Christina, you may not know what a facsimile is. That's very possible. But it's basically how you transfer, instead of sending a PDF, you would scan a paper and it would send over the wires to go to another fax, okay? And so I sold this to U of M. They were my account. So I sold copiers and faxes to University of Michigan. And I did all right. It was okay because, you know, being a thespian, I loved to display my product, right? So I loved entertaining the folks with my copier skills. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And nobody stayed at the copier place. So I was like the #1 salesperson after 3 months, not because I was that great, but because everybody quit. So I decided this was not a long-term career, and I saw a job posting for Velasas. Now, back in the day, those job postings were not on LinkedIn or Indeed. They were in an actual newspaper that you had to go through and you circled. Well, I applied to one, and it was, interestingly enough, an ad that was listed in error. So they didn't mean to post it. The Detroit Free Press had made an error and posted it inappropriately. But it was for a company called Velasas, which I had read was one of the 100 best places to work for in America. So I'm like, well, I want to work there. And so I badgered these poor people to get an interview. And when I say badgered, I called them probably every other day because that's where I wanted to work. And finally, the department head of the group that I applied to called me and said, Donna, I appreciate your diligence, but we don't have a role open. And I said, oh, I'm so disappointed because I really want to work for Velasas. I think I would be a great fit, blah, 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 chat, talking myself up. And he said, you know what, you've been trying so hard. Why don't you come in and you can talk to me just so that I can get to know you. So if anything happens, we'll let you know. Excellent. So I go in and I meet with this gentleman, great guy, sat there for an hour, and he looked at me and he said, I don't have any openings, but I think you're a fit for this company, and I just had an idea. I need to go talk to somebody. And so he went down the hallway, talked to somebody else, and had me go down and meet with Jamie, who was to become my manager, because they had a position open for an internal hire only, which means that they could hire from within the company, but they couldn't go outside the company to hire anyone. And so they talked about it, and they asked me to interview for it. And in every single interview I had was, why should I hire you versus somebody internal who's already applied and knows the company? I probably answered that question 10 times, to the point where I went to the VP. I was having my final email or my final meeting with them. And I may have said, don't you guys talk to each other? I have answered this question already like 10 times. Yeah, I did say that. I don't advise that, but I did say that. And so I finally got hired, and I worked there for 23 years. I worked at Velasas for 23 years. Now here's the thing. Velasas was all about coupons. I love coupons. I'm a big coupon user. So it was a good fit for me, right? So, but here's the things that over my 23 years at Velasas, this is the core thing that I learned. Just because you've never done something before doesn't mean you can't do it. And this is something that I learned over and over again. And I'll give you a few examples. One was the first experience I had was when they asked me to become a leader. And I said, well, I can't do that because I think people are stupid and I'm impatient. I said that, again, not recommended, but I said it. Corey's laughing at me right now because he knows this is true. I'm very impatient. And like, there's no way I'll have the patience to work with somebody and develop somebody. And they said, well, we see something that you don't, so we're going to give it a whirl. Okay, so I tried it. And I found out that I liked it. The next thing was, do you want to move into sales? Now, remember what my first job was, selling copiers and faxes? Really didn't dig it. the cold calling, the knocking on the doors. I had a priest kick me out of a church. It was not fun. So I was not overly excited about becoming a salesperson, but they convinced me to give it a whirl. So not only did I become a salesperson, I moved down to Cincinnati where we don't have an office, where I would have no colleagues and no friends. Oh, that sounds awesome. So I did it and it worked out. And in fact, I worked on Procter & Gamble and I turned Procter & Gamble with a team into our first $100 million client. That was a big freaking deal. That was a big deal, and I was super proud of that. And so as I'm getting rolling, I'm like, okay, I got the sales thing down. I got this. They came to me again. And they said, you know what? We want you to move to London, England, not Ontario, London, England, and take on the European team and teach them how to sell coupons, because up until recently, coupons were illegal in Europe, and now they're legalized, and so nobody knows what they are or how to use them. So you should go over and teach them. And I said, all right, I mean, I've been wrong about the things I could do so far, so I'll go do this. And what do you know? I had an amazing experience. Highly recommend doing that big leap when given the opportunity. Highly recommend, because you grow up like that. But it was so amazing. And I learned a lot, and I created new media products in Italy. And we launched it and it sold out and it worked amazing. And I was like, oh my God, look at what we did. It was so overwhelming. And so I loved it and I never wanted to leave. And then they asked me to leave. So I did, because they wanted me to come home and work on integrating a company that we had just acquired. So Velasquez was $1 billion company, and they just acquired a company that was $1.2 billion. So we acquired a company that was bigger than us, and they wanted me to come home and help design what the marketing and the sales team might look like. Because I've done that before, never. So hey, here we go again. Donna, let's go figure out this thing that you've never done before. Sure. So I did that. After completing that, I went into a sales training role, sort of like what I had done in Europe, but just training the 500 sales executives that we had at home domestically. I worked on training them, and then I moved into a general management role of the coupon book, which was my very favorite thing. So I had a really amazing experience at Velasquez. And in 2018, with a change of leadership at the very top, he wanted to bring in his own management team. And so the management team got exited from the company. So we all got packaged out, so to say. So they said, we thank you for your service, but we're going to completely change our leadership team. So I was no longer at Velasquez after 23 years. And you know what? You don't look in the newspaper anymore for your job, and people don't answer your calls when you harp at them and beg them to give you an interview. It's all automated. And I was at a loss. I had no idea what to do. But this is what I knew. I knew that just because I hadn't done something before didn't mean I couldn't do it. I had also learned that I know more than I think I know. This is something that everybody should believe about themselves. You know more than you think you know, because you will find when put in a position to figure things out, you actually know more. It's uncanny. And this is something that I always told my team, especially a young team at Velasquez, that don't ask me the question. You know this answer. I know you know this answer. And so trust yourself. That was a big part of it. So when I was looking for the job that I'm in now, I decided two things. One, I was done with media. I had spent 23 years in media. I didn't want to go back into especially promotional media. And I didn't want to go into print because, let's face it, print is not a hot topic lately. And the other thing I knew I didn't want to do was automotive. Not that there's anything wrong with the automotive industry, but I loved coupons, and that was part of my success at Velasquez, was that I was a user of the product. Now, I drive a car, don't get me wrong, but I'm not passionate about, timing chains and I don't know, do they still use timing chains? I'm not passionate, clearly, I'm not passionate about that. So I didn't want to go into automotive. And to say that you don't want to work in automotive in Detroit, not smart. However, I decided that healthcare and biotech research in general was what I wanted to focus on. And so I researched everything. I researched and participated in networking events that, man, some of these networking events were interesting. I went to a cannabis, which is marijuana because it got legalized here in Michigan. I went to a cannabis networking event downtown where I learned so much. It was so interesting. But what's really interesting, it was through that network connection and through linking that I found the job posting for Innovative. That's how I ultimately found this posting, was through the cannabis connection. Interesting little point. So when it came to interviewing, flash forward, now we get to this role, here I am 17 minutes later and I'm just now getting to my actual job. But as we get to where I sit today, I had to really sit back and think, am I going to waste these people's time interviewing for an industry that I know nothing about? I can tell you anything you ever want to know about a coupon. Anything. I can tell you everything. There's more to it than you ever want to know, and I could tell you inside and out. So why didn't I go back into coupons? I know everything about that. That's why I didn't go back into coupons. I know everything about that. That's so boring. So I went to this interview and I just promised myself I was going to be very honest. Very honest. Some people call it authenticity. Basically, it's just integrity, just really saying what you mean. And so I went in there and I was very clear about what I am not. And a scientist is one of those. All you had to do is look at my resume to know that. I mean, no big surprise. They knew who they were interviewing, but I'm not a scientist. And innovative research is a biotech. So Christina, I went from talking about redemption rates to talking about human and animal biologicals. Now, when you're standing in a hallway and you're talking about, how did that program redeem? How did it pay out? Like, those are very normal conversations. I went to innovative and I've witnessed conversations about horse urine. And they were having an honest conversation about horse urine. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. And then, hey, we have an order for earwax. What is this place? Crazy. And those aren't even the craziest things that we sell. So as I started to get involved with this, these conversations that just seemed so surreal, like who has this conversation, became really everyday. And as I progressed and got, I'll say, a little bit more comfortable. I don't know if you ever really get comfortable talking about horse urine, but more comfortable is what I'll say. So started going through that process and getting more involved. And then we went to the process of starting a new website. So that was one of the very first projects. I started on March 4th of last year, and the website launched on May 17th. So this was a very short time span. So we went through a process of trying to figure out how to get the thousands of products that we had onto the new website. So that was the first project that I had with a team. This was not me alone. Don't ever think that anybody is successful on their own. Not going to happen. But the whole team worked and did this amazing job. They created this great website that was done just in time for me to go to my first bio conference. 18,000 scientists and me. What could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? So I go to this bio conference. It's the first week of June. And I sit down and I am having meetings. So you set up meetings with different companies because we're trying to explain who we are, get our name out, see if there's something we can do. What do you need that you can't find? Because that's what we do. We find crazy things that people need for research and bring them in. So what we do, I should articulate this, what we do is we seek out and manufacture products that help researchers in vitro research. So there's different stages of like research for, let's say, pharmaceuticals. We do stage 1. When you're working in the dish, you call us for whatever you need. So when you're working at a test tube or a dish and you need to see how a certain antibody reacts to a certain biological, you call us and we'll make sure that you have it so you can go do what you need to do. We don't work on the clinical trial. So this is when you actually have like a drug that people can take That's the other side. So we're at the very beginning of the pharmaceutical development process, not in the clinical trials where they have actual human beings trying it. So the stuff we do, human beings do not consume. No, it's all in the dish. So we're talking to these companies to see what we can do for them. And so part of that conversation is my very first meeting, and I'm explaining to this individual who is the chief science officer at a major cancer research organization. I was very excited to get this meeting. I sat down with them and I'm explaining to him what innovative research does and what we could do to help him. And I stopped my spiel, and you know what the first thing he says to me is, "You're not a scientist, are you?" First thing out of his mouth after I introduce myself and say who I am. I was like, so that whole, even though you've never done anything before, you can always figure it out, statement was going through my head like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is too much. Come to find out, I say, well, no, you're right. I'm not. What was the giveaway? I thought it was pretty good when I opened it. He's like, no, everything you said was fine, but you were actually looking me in the eye when you were speaking. And so I knew you couldn't have been a scientist. So had I been just talking like this the whole time, I might have gotten away with it, but I didn't. But I learned a lot during that and came back. And one of the things that's happening in our industry right now is there's a lot of consolidation going on. So companies buying companies. And what happens to a degree is there's a transition that occurs from small business to corporate, where the emphasis on profit tends to grow over time, which is not a bad thing. That is capitalism at its core, but it grows over time, and sort of sometimes the priorities can shift a little bit. And so we as Innovative, we're saying we need to find some more sources of companies that prioritize quality over the profit. We'll even pay, we'll pay for it, but we need that consistency. We need to make sure that we're giving the right thing to our customers. And we weren't really finding a lot of options. So the owners said, hey, Donna, why don't you start a company and we'll do that? Oh, okay. So just because I haven't done something before doesn't mean I can't do it. Right. Okay, let's do this. So if we can, let's see, I don't know if I know how to do this, but I am going to, I can
share your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can share this, and I'm just going to jump over here. Can you see the Donovivo website here?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So this is the company that was started in May. Just started in May. Very, very excited about this. So what this company is, Donovivo is Latin for living gift. That's what that means. And what we do is we look for people who are afflicted with non-cured, not diseases that yet to have a cure. I don't want to say uncurable. Diseases that have yet to have a cure. So people with Alzheimer's, cancer, lupus, muscular dystrophy. If you have these diseases, we want to find you because we're going to take a small blood draw and we're going to transfer that into usable product for researchers around the world. So what we do is we did some social media, we have our website, and what we do is we go to the person's home. So we will, because let's face it, some people who are sick may not be able to comfortably leave their house, especially in a pandemic, right? That's a problem. So what we do is we have a phlebotomy team that we work with, and they go to the home, mask up, glove up, and they go to the home so that they are comfortable, and we do the collection directly in their home. So that's what we do. Now, so on May 15th, when this launched, I was like, did it, done. Business started. Now, just so you know, this includes getting IRB oversight. What that is, that's an institutional review board, which is a separate ethics committee, because basically, if you're going to go poke people with a needle, you need some oversight. People need to be watching you to make sure that you're following the rules and that you're being respectful of their privacy and whatnot. So we had to get through this approval, which was, of course, something never done before, but figured it out. And we did that. So flash forward, I'm happy, we're launched, we got approval from the IRB, we have a website, it's beautiful, we have social media running, hey, done, check the box, we're good. Until the owners were like, Donna, we need some donors. Oh. Okay, so donors. Well, there was this thing called COVID-19. Heard of it? Yeah, I thought maybe. And it's yet to be cured. But we're working on it, right? So we became aware of a farm on the west side of Michigan that had an outbreak of COVID-19. 55 of its employees got sick, and thankfully, they all recovered. And I called this place on a whim and said, hey, we're a new company in Southeast Michigan and happened to hear your story. And I don't know if you know this or not, but those who were sick have antibodies that many researchers around the world would be interested in studying. And so the immediate response, not shockingly, was no, don't want to do that. Okay, but then I got a call back about a week and a half later saying, you know what? The owners and the people who were sick kind of want to help with the solution. And so, yeah, we're going to have you come out. So I coordinated with the phlebotomist and her assistant, and we went to 2 locations on the west side of the state. On the first location, we collected 20 samples, and it's 40 milliliters that we collect. So it's not like a big bag, like if you're going to donate blood at the Red Cross. This is 40 milliliters. It's like 3 tablespoons if you bake. That's all we collect. It's just like getting in a lab at your doctor. And we collected 20 in their cafeteria at one location. And then we went to the second location, which is Biosecure, which means that you can't bring anything that could possibly infect the chickens because it's an organic farm. The worst case scenario is that chickens get sick because they don't inoculate them or anything. You can't be sick. So you can imagine having COVID-19 was really a problem for them. And so I kid you not, I drive up to the booth, like the attendant at the booth, they have me get out of the car. They spray me down with Lysol, and they sprayed the inside of my car down with Lysol. And I had to drive through a tire bath to make sure that my car hadn't driven anything that would bring disease into the farm. The same thing happens to the phlebotomy team. We go in and we're met by the individual we're supposed to meet. And for that place, we did the collections outside in the sun because they didn't want to risk us unintentionally bringing some disease into the chickens. So we stayed outside and we did it outside. So why do I tell you this? Well, this is how this company then translates into innovative research where I work. So Donovivo went out and got those approvals and the medical records and all of that. And what that turns into, if you can see my site, is if you see here, there's a product here, the single donor human SARS-CoV-2 positive serum. That's like the fancy science term for COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. And so what you'll see here is we sell the serum, which is a derivative of the blood that we took. We spin it down, like literally we spin it and it separates. And what the red blood cells are on one side and the white blood cells and the remainder basically is on the other side. And we collect that and we freeze it. Okay, and I know this looks like a big bottle, but do you see here where it says 100 UL? That is 100 microliters. Do you know what a microliter is? No, I'm gonna guess not, because I really didn't either. So if you think of a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, right? That's 2 liters. If you cut that in half, that's 1 liter. A microliter is 1/1,000,000th of that liter, and we sell 1/1,000,000th of that liter for $125. 1/1,000,000th of that liter, just to give you an idea, that little drop right there, that's a microliter. That's probably more than a microliter. So that's how this crazy idea of we're gonna go collect these disease state samples ourselves translates into the commercialization, and we told everybody we were gonna sell it, by the way. Full disclosure, we're selling it. They had to sign that they were okay with it and that they knew that we were going to sell it. We gave them a $25 gift card for giving us their sample. but this is what we did with it. And now researchers literally around the world are contacting us to buy that drop so that they can test their diagnostics, so that they can see if their treatments work, and to test their vaccines. So this is what we do. And although I'm an expert in coupons, the excitement I have about participating in something like this is so real, because this is like, I get goosebumps right now, because this is so part of today and every day and really impacting everything that's going on. So that's what I wanted to share with you about what my job is. It's everything from creating a website to going out and visiting 34 chicken farmers to collect blood. It's that vast. And so what I would tell you is, please don't box yourself in with a title. That is the worst thing to do. Don't decide you're going to be an air traffic controller, hold on to it and never let go. Don't decide you're going to be a VP of operations and say, I can't go collect blood. That's not what a VP of operations does. Take those opportunities to try something that you never in a million years thought you would do, and find out if you like it, because that is where you're going to find your greatest success, is when you find out that you can do something that you had no idea that you could do. And that's what I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask you if you have any questions.
Sorry, I'm really tired right now.
Yeah, me too. I'm exhausted. I just talked.
I wasn't actually expecting the job shadow today. I just got an email this morning about it, and I have a meeting like half an hour after this, like at 1. So,
Okay.
my question is like, I guess, what do you most enjoy about your job? Like, was there a specific moment where you're like, oh, this is what I want to do, like, for a while? Like when did you realize that?
Christina, I've never had that moment. And I think that's important to recognize. I have never had that moment where I said, this is what I want to do, because there's always something else that's an opportunity that I just don't know about. So what I would tell you, Christine, is there's 2 sides to what I love to do. I would tell you that the highlight of my week so far was a conversation that I don't know if you can see, Corey, but I had a conversation, we had a coaching conversation yesterday, and we just sat and we talked about scenarios and how do you handle things, and it was about leadership, and I love that. Like, it is so fun for me. For the person who thinks people are stupid and I'm too impatient and never be a leader, one of my very, very favorite things is watching somebody else become a leader and helping them do that. It's so fun because you can see their intensity of wanting to do it. And I just, like, I get jazzed out of that because I see somebody who's going to help somebody else succeed. And that just jazzes me. So there's that part that I absolutely adore. The other part that I really like is making something happen that otherwise wouldn't. So going out and getting those doing that chicken farmer thing, it was weird. It was full on weird, but I made something happen that wouldn't have happened had I not taken it on and done it. And I know that. And having that knowledge of we're in a better place today and we have access to samples that we would have never had access to had I not gone and worked with the chicken farm. So there's 2 things. One, developing leadership and helping to develop leadership, not being the leader. Being the leader is not fun, Christina. Just so you know, there's a difference. Being the leader is hard work. You're not always the good guy, and not always being the good guy is not fun. So I always say, be careful what you wish for when you say you want to be a leader. Be careful, because it's not the easiest job, but helping somebody else to become a leader and making something happen that otherwise would not, that fires me up. And I don't care what industry or what job it is, that is what's going to fire me up every single time.
I mean, I'm usually forced to be the leader. Like, no one else wants to, so I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do it.
And it's not fun, right? It's not always fun.
Sometimes it is. There's always like that one chance where it's like, oh, it's actually kind of fun, and everyone's like, yeah, you're pretty good at it.
Yeah, and then there's those other times.
Yes, for sure.
Any other questions, Christina, or Amy, or Corey?
Well, I'm just so glad that this was recorded. you are so inspirational, and so many of your messages are right on point for youth that are not sure of what they're going to be, first generation in their family to go to college.
Mhm.
I mean, you're just such an amazing role model, and I'm so glad that this is being recorded and that more people will be able to benefit from this,
So
because we need, yeah.
Can I ask Christina a couple questions?
Yeah.
Do you mind, Christina?
I don't mind.
Okay. So can I ask how old you are?
I'm 17.
Ooh, 17. So are you a senior?
Yeah.
Ooh. So where do you go to school?
I go to Washington Technical Middle College.
Oh, look at you, fancy pants. So do you have an interest? Do you have a certain area of interest that you're looking at right now?
I'm kind of exploring right now because I don't know what I want to do.
Good
But
call.
I'm looking into medicine and technology, which is
Really?
what you guys are in.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so interesting. So I told you that I went to that bio conference. At that conference, there was everything from, and I literally tear up every time I talk about this. The first genetic altering drug, was approved in late 18, early 19, and two little boys who had been born with a genetic deficiency, an ocular deficiency, and their sight just continued to shadow to the point where it's like a pinpoint. And there is a company called Spark Therapeutics in Philadelphia, and they got approval for the first gene altering drug. Now this is a big deal because what that means is that they mutate a gene and they put it on a virus, and then they inject a virus, weird. And they inject that virus into the area being affected. And then that virus basically knows where to go, and it goes to that gene and it fixes the gene. So these two little boys are in the same family, both had it done. Those treatments for those two little boys, each one cost $1.2 million. $1.2 million. But just imagine the billions that it took to create that technology, right? Had it done, and then one day, I literally tear up every time I talk about this. Their mom was making lunch, and she looked at her son, and she said, "Hey, why are you looking at me so strangely?" And he said, "Because I can see you, Mommy." That is what medicine and biology does, and it's so amazing. So going to that, like, I still get chills. It was so crazy listening to these stories. And so I heard that story about this amazing new pharmaceutical. And then I heard the other stories about how technology and AI is being used to better understand the different molecules in the cells within the body. So those two, technology and medicine, are so intertwined right now that considering both, it's just mind-boggling. So that's very exciting options that you're looking at. Very exciting.
Oh, you are just so inspirational.
That's me. No, I do. I love, well, I just love talking about me because I'm a fun subject. No, I'm just kidding.
That too, yeah.
No, but I do. It's very fun. There's lots of lessons learned for everyone, and just recognizing them when they happen is probably the biggest thing. But I can't emphasize enough. You know more than you think you know, Christina. And even though you've never done it before, you can do it. Whatever the it is, you can.
Well,
Chicken
Donna,
farmers. Yeah, chicken farmers. Yeah.
I mean, I have been thrown into the deep end. Like, my job right now, actually, Amy got me this job for Washtenaw County.
Oh.
And it's for data entry for greenhouse gas emissions. And I've never worked with, like, data in general. Like, I just do school, and
Yeah.
I've never worked a job. So, and my interview was, like, thrown at me. It's like, hey, it's open. You want it? And I was like, okay, I'll take it. And now I have this job.
So what have you learned? Like whether it's about the data that you're doing or about yourself, what have you learned?
I guess I can learn really fast at, like, any task, because I had no idea how to do it, and my boss didn't know how to do it either. He was just like, here's a project for an intern. You want to try it? And I was like, okay. And I just didn't know what I was getting myself into, really. And I've just I've learned that I can email really efficiently for some reason. I don't know why. Like I've been sending around
It's
like 20 emails a day and just back and forth, and um it's a really weird experience for me, I guess, because I don't really like emailing people, or
right.
like I don't like the communication part. It's kind of it's not my thing. I
You're
like
sounding more and
marketing.
more like a scientist, Christina. That's it. So how do you feel about the responsibility that you've gotten to having this role? Because I'm sure there is some.
Well, it's my own project, so I work by myself at home, and so the entire project is all my work. So it's really rewarding just to see
Yeah.
like I just finished a project like last week, and just to see like all the data and all in one is like really cool.
Yeah. And then all of the insights you can draw from that data, I'm sure is amazing.
Hmm.
That's fantastic, Christina. Really fantastic. Well,
This is so great.
questions? Any other questions I can ask or answer?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, the good news is that we're going to be able to record this and like bottle up your life lessons and your amazing ability to like boil science down and explain things to anyone. But Donna, this has been just amazing. And as we look at programming for next year, I have lots of ideas about how we can utilize and bottle up your enthusiasm and inspiration. So
Well, please do,
yeah.
because we love to share the message of innovative, and especially when it involves youth and just what kind of opportunities are out there. We absolutely want to do that.
Well,
So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Donna. And we'll be in touch when we start the planning for next year. Like I said, this was kind of an experiment with virtually engaging our young people and more career professionals, but we've learned so much. And again, this was the best one I've seen. I hate to say that we'll have to cut that out of the recording for other people, but this was just amazing. And so we're going to be following up with you and really engaging you. And I just can't thank you enough for your passion and enthusiasm.
And Christina, if you're on LinkedIn, make sure that you link with everybody you see on this Zoom call, okay?
All right, for sure.
Start building your network now, because it's never too early.
Yep.
Could I ask one more question?
Yes, please.
It's for all of you. Have any of you actually used your like school degrees to get to get where you're at right now?
I'm going to have Corey start with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the marketing manager, and I have a marketing background and a degree in marketing. So I would definitely say that it's definitely useful. I will say this. I got my degree later in life, so I had this time where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I really think that going back to school later really helped me with that. So I would say you're doing the right thing. Try out as many hats as you can, and find out what sticks and what you really like, and go after it. So be determined. And the only thing I want to add too is don't be afraid. Just like the job that you're at right now, you're doing some uncomfortable things. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. I'm always uncomfortable, and that means that I'm always challenging myself, and that means that I'm always progressing. So that's really all I want to say.
Yeah, it's a great ad. Yeah, I would tell you that my marketing degree, I would say my communications minor probably was what I used the most. The ability to communicate. I mean, Christina, you pinpointed it. People aren't very good at communicating. Being able to say and articulate and put energy behind their words is not easy. And so I took a lot of classes on how to communicate, and also being a thespian helps. But I do think my communication degree, my minor, is probably what I put even more to work, because remember I told you that air traffic control thing, I have a thing for process and seeing process. I went into business marketing. I probably could have gone into business procurement or process or logistics and enabled that side of my brain more. I went into marketing. I love marketing, but that's not necessarily what I do. I let Corey do that because he's better at it. And that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to say you're not good at something. That's key. So, Amy, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, Amy, I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and did accounting for a few years, and then actually had a similar experience where I was kind of randomly given one of those career assessment tests, and they came back, and it was funny, and they're like, and it was at my accounting firm too, because they're like, oh, you have extra time, do this because we sell it to our clients, and they're like, you should not be an accountant. I'm like, what? I have this job, I have this degree. And I was like, well, what should I be? And then they're like, well, human resources or an attorney. And I'm like, what? And then I thought about what I really liked and was good at and what was a little bit of a struggle, and explored human resources, and then went back to school and got a master's in business with a focus on human resources. And it's been a much better fit. So
Yeah.
it was a very expensive, live lots. It was an expensive experiment, but I still use the accounting degree on occasion. But the HR, yeah, but again, I was in my 20s before really finding my passion. And it was fortunately, college wasn't nearly as expensive as it is now a long time ago. So
A long time ago, I'm with you. Yeah. In fact, I met Amy when I was in transition 2 years ago. That's where I met Amy. It's when I had lost my job from Phalanxes and was looking for this one. So that's where I met Amy.
And it's worked out really well for you, I think.
It has worked out well. It has. No complaints.